Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. All Things Middle-earth here with a quick video guide on how to skill and build Eomer. If you picked Gondor as your starting faction, you start with Eomer as well as Faramir, but everyone gets Faramir. But Eomer is the faction-specific commander you get in Gondor. Today we're going to look at how to build him, what gear to use, what troops to use, all that good stuff coming up in just 1 second. Now, starting out, before we look at Eomer, I just want to remind everyone we do have a top-up link down in the description below. If you are spending anything in the game, even if it's $1, if you use a top-up link down in the description, it does not cost anything extra, and it does support the channel. I get a small kickback from that. It's an affiliate link, so if you are spending, consider using that to support the channel so I can keep putting out content like this. Now, these are meant to be pretty short and sweet, so I'm going to try and do so. I'll put on the screen really quickly so you guys can see what kind of resources we have. This little kind of cheat sheet or guide I have for Eomer, which shows the skill priority, his gear, the suggested troops, all that good stuff. This is linked down below. Anything we ever show on screen or use will be in the description. So feel free to download that, share it with your team. If you started in Gondor and have a team running a bunch of Eomers, you want to make sure your team has them built correctly, because there are actually a couple of builds for him technically, and one is far, far superior than the other one. Now, if you are brand new to the game, you can look at his kit and see that 2 of his skills say that he does physical damage, and 2 of his skills have to do with mounted units. So he really has a mounted unit build and a physical damage, commander damage build. And far and away, it is better to focus on the physical damage build. If you're brand new to the game, again, that is the meta. Commander physical damage is the meta in this game. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus on his R3 first. We're going to level this up because at level 10, just above me, you can see damage dealt plus 10% for 1 round. So we want that to trigger first so that when these do overlap, you get an extra 10% on Marshal of the Mark. Those are the 2 skills we're going to focus on. Now, if you have extra points, you can put them into the R5, into a red leader. It's not a bad thing, but troops are just not where it's at. But we're going to get a little bit extra damage from our troops in different allied formations, as well as some more HP. I'm kind of blocking it here, but slight HP. Again, unless you take him to Zenith 6, you're not going to have 10 points here. And I wouldn't suggest taking him to Z6. I think an R10 Eomer is fantastic, but beyond that, I think starts to be a little bit of overkill. As a side note, I just want to make sure everyone knows that if you haven't played, or maybe you just didn't hear the news, there was a different build with mounted commanders that utilized these skills right here, where basically every time that your commanders would deal damage, they would have a follow-up thing happen. Some were healing, some were damaged. So you'd run these mounted commanders, Theoden and Eomer, and they would just reduce a bunch of damage. They would heal, they would do all kinds of stuff. That has since been nerfed. So if you did not know that and you're thinking, oh, but I run my Eomer with Theoden and with Eowyn or Denethor and Eomer, all those guys that have those follow-up mechanics, that has been since nerfed. So that's why we're looking at the full damage build here for Eomer, and I would not suggest running him with those mounted commanders. I'd run him just as a standard damage commander. Now, as far as gear goes for Eomer, just like with Gimli, which I'll link in the top right if you started an Airborne, have Gimli, or just have a Gimli you want to gear up, he is doing physical damage like we saw. So the attack right here, which is this button right here with the sword, it says effects ability to inflict physical damage, which we want that. The other thing we want is damage, which determines ability to inflict all types of damage. So every piece of gear we put on Eomer, we're going to try and get as much attack and damage as possible. So if you're wondering about best in slot, again, I'll put it on the screen so you guys can see, but the best in slot is going to be the Axe of Khazad-dûm. It's going to be the Berserker's Raiment. It's going to be the Cask of Pride, and it's going to be the Palantir of Orthanc. Getting them put on here for you guys so you can see. This is kind of the best in slot, highest commander attack build that you can put, or gear that you can put on your Eomer. Now, as far as sets go, the best sets for damage commanders are either going to be something like Might or Perseverance, which give you a percent-based boost on their damage they put out. So for Eomer right here, you can see he has this set, or you can do 2 sets of Might, which would be 10%, but it says physical damage dealt by the commander's formation plus 5%. Perseverance does 2%, but ramps up over the battle. Those are 2 options. The other option is going to be Sharp Blade. Sharp Blade is this one right here, which says this formation attack plus 20 during combat. So our difference between these skills are, one is percent based and one is just a straight numerical increase. And how you want to do this is, if you are newer, if you only have like maybe blue gear, maybe some purples, if your attack stat is lower, you want to go with Sharp Blade, because that straight across the board 20 is more valuable for you because your number is lower. However, if you are a veteran player, or maybe you're a big spender, maybe you just decided I'm wailing out on Eomer, good for you. If you have better gear, you have some gold pieces, you're starting to get that number going up. I'd say probably around the 150 range or higher. 5 or 10% on a 199 attack is very, very good for Eomer. Whereas Sharp Blade right now would put me over 200. but it starts to kind of get to be overkill at that point. So don't worry too much about boosting, an insane amount. If you have good gear, go with percent. If you don't have good gear or you have brand new gear, go with sharp blade. So hopefully that makes sense. But low numbers, you want numerical increase with sharp blade. High numbers, you want percent increase with things like might or perseverance. Next up, we're going to look at is relic. I usually like to just give relics a pass or fail for commanders, so I can kind of just quickly say, yes, it's worth it. No, it's not. And very quickly speaking, Eomer is going to get a pass on his relic. Again, relics are expensive. They take a long time. On my account that I've spent on since pretty much day one, minute one of this game, I have 3 total relics. So you have to be careful. Again, you could obviously invest specifically in relics, but you won't have an unlimited amount of relics. You have to choose wisely. And Eomer's for me does get a pass. Now, not only for every commander are these stat increases good, you really want to start looking at the effects to see what they do. So the big thing for Eomer, it says when his initiative reaches 30, the next instance of damage dealt by Eomer, by the commander, is plus 5% up to plus 30%. Now at 50, mounted units are also going to prioritize range units, which is fine. But as I talked about, units are not quite the meta. So this is less significant than this increase of damage by 30%. So that's what we want to focus on. And it's worth noting too, with Eomer, once you level him up to level 50, his initiative will be over, it'll be over 50. So you don't have to worry about putting specific gear on him to reach that number. But if you are wanting to get those benefits sooner and you're level 40 or something, you could technically move gear around, but I don't think it's worth it. I think just level him up until he has it, but run the best and select gear that you can. Now, as far as troop goes, as you can see in the sheet, my recommendation is going to be Guardians for Eomer, but there's a quick caveat here. Again, like we've talked about in a couple of videos, in my opinion, it is best to go for cheap troops, cost-effective troops that have high HP and high defense, and Guardians are pretty good at that. So Guardians are a very good universal troop that you can use. I'd put Guardians on every single commander in your army. So Eomer, if you're also running Faramir, or maybe you got a few others, everyone should be running Guardians. It's cheap, it's uniform, it's easy, and they are tanky, so it lets your commanders do a lot of the damage. So this is what I'd run for the most part. Now, as you saw with Eomer's relic, as well as his R5 skill, he does give effects or bonus effects to mounted units. So my recommendation, if you are doing that, if you have enough points to go into his R5, or if you have the relic, is going to be to run Cataphracts. Now, Cataphracts are also a very tanky, very good unit. They're just more expensive. So bear that in mind. If you're going to fight a lot more, you might want to go with something like Guardians. But if you log in a couple times a day, you want to move a little bit quicker with the mounted units, they're not a bad option by any means. So his kind of specialized recommendation will be something like a Cataphract. Now, it's also worth noting, like we talked about in a few videos, if you're running another commander in your army who calls for a specific type of troop, like if you're running Gilgalad, you might be running elves on Eomer. If you're running Falcon or something, you could be running dwarves on Eomer. Whatever someone calls for, it's okay to deviate from the standard plan if that's what's needed in your army. But for the most part, we're going to do either Guardians or we're going to do Cataphracts. And that will pretty much do it for our video guide on Eomer. Again, these are meant to be short and sweet, so I'm trying to keep this under 10 minutes. Feel free to share this or the graphic that I put down below in the description with any of your teammates or friends or whatever it is. Because again, if you started in Gondor, you're going to have a lot of Eomers running around. And if your Eomers are all running around with the mounted skills and mounted units, you are not going to do as good as if you were running the physical damage skills. So make sure everyone knows that, because it's a little bit easier on commanders like Gimli, where they're almost all damage skills. So worst case scenario, he's probably not optimized as well. He's still doing damage. But with Eomer, there's going to be a big difference between running a mounted build and running a physical damage build for him. So make sure you get that right. Share this if you guys want to, but appreciate you watching. Stay tuned to the channel because we'll have more videos out soon for Arwen as well as Faramir. So if you started in Lothlorien, I've got a guide for you coming very soon. So stay tuned for that. But that'll do for this one, and I'll see you guys in a future video.